In the deep, icy waters off the coast of California, the ocean has kept for decades one of the most fascinating secrets of 20th-century naval history, a secret that combines the glory of American industrial design, the tragedy of war, the mystery of forced desertion, and ultimately, the triumph of modern archaeology. This is the USS Stewart, DD 224, a vessel that earned the nickname of the Ghost Ship of the Pacific, and which, after disappearing from human radar, has been rediscovered in a state of preservation that has astonished the international scientific community. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. The discovery, made by an elite coalition consisting of Ocean Infinity, the Air-Sea Heritage Foundation, the NOAA Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and the Naval History and Heritage Command, NHHC, is not just the discovery of a shipwreck. It is the recovery of a silent witness of the Second World War that lived one of the most unusual and cinematic trajectories that a warship has ever experienced. The story of the USS Stewart begins long before the world plunged into the chaos of World War II. The vessel was first launched in 1919 at the Philadelphia shipyards. Its name paid homage to Rear Admiral Charles Stewart, a naval hero of the United States Navy who distinguished himself by his leadership in key conflicts of the 19th century, including the War of 1812 and the Barbary Pirate Wars. The ship belonged to the class Clemson, a series of 4 funnel destroyers designed to be fast and versatile. In its early years, the Stewart was a symbol of the projection of power of a nation that was beginning to look beyond its Atlantic borders. Eventually, he was assigned to the Asiatic Fleet, a strategically critical unit that patrolled the tense waters near the Philippine Islands and the coasts of China. For 2 decades, the Stewart carried out escort, patrol, and naval diplomacy missions in the Far East, becoming a familiar presence in Asian ports. However, their fate would change forever with the outbreak of hostilities with the Empire of Japan in December 1941. In February of 1942, the USS Stewart was in the center of the action in the Battle of Badung Strait. During a fierce exchange of fire, the ship suffered severe structural damage. It was taken to a dry dock in Surabaya, in present-day Indonesia, for emergency repairs. However, the situation was desperate. Japanese forces were advancing rapidly through Southeast Asia, and the port was the target of constant air attacks. Faced with imminent capture and the impossibility of saving the ship, the U.S. authorities made a painful decision to sink their own vessel. Explosive charges were detonated, and the Stewart was abandoned, sinking into the mud of Surabaya Harbor. For the Navy of the USA, the DD 224 was removed from the active lists and declared permanently lost. But this is where the legend begins. Secretly, the Imperial Japanese Navy was not content with leaving the ship at the bottom of the harbor. Thanks to an amazing engineering operation, they rescued the Stewart, pulled it out of the mud, repaired its battle damage, changed its armament, and incorporated it into their own fleet under the name Patrol Boat Number 102. During the following years, American pilots began to report something disturbing. They saw a destroyer that had the unmistakable lines of an American ship with its characteristic 4 funnels, but that sailed under the flag of the rising sun. The Stewart became a ghost ship, a recurring image in Allied intelligence reports that failed to understand how a dead ship had come back to life to fight on the opposing side. At the end of the war in 1945, the Stewart was found in Kura, Japan. The United States Navy regained possession and the ship returned to American soil in a ceremony full of symbolism. However, the ship was already obsolete and worn out from its years of dual service. In 1946, the Stewart was decommissioned for good, but his service had one last act. In a final effort for military utility, it was towed off the coast of California to serve as a target for target practice. F-6F Hellcat fighters and several surface ships poured their fire on it until, finally, the Stewart sank for the second and last time, disappearing into the abyss of the Pacific not to be seen for more than 75 years. For decades, the exact location of the Stewart was a mystery. It was known to be off the California coast, but the ocean is vast and deep. The rediscovery was not the result of chance, but of one of the most advanced underwater exploration missions in recent times. The team led by Ocean Infinity used a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, AUVs. These robots, equipped with state-of-the-art side-scan sonar, performed a thorough and systematic scan of the seabed. Unlike ancient expeditions that relied on cables and human operators aboard bathyscaphes, these AUVs can navigate independently for hours, mapping the terrain with pinpoint accuracy. Finally, The sonar signals revealed a structural anomaly at a depth of 3,500 feet, about 1,070 meters. When the high-definition cameras descended, the images they transmitted were stunning. There was the USS Stewart, perched on the seabed as if time had stood still. What has most surprised the underwater archaeologists of the NHHC and the NOAA is the degree of preservation of the ship. Despite the fact that the ship was launched more than a century ago and spent decades submerged after an intense practice bombardment, the Stewart is virtually intact. The images show that the hull structure remains firm. The 4 funnels that made it famous are still recognizable, and much of the deck equipment is in its original place. Archaeologists emphasize that this level of preservation is exceptional for a ship of its age. Scientists attribute this preservation to several factors. 1. The depth. At 3,500 feet, sunlight does not reach and the oxygen level is extremely low, which drastically slows down the chemical and biological corrosion of the metal. 2. Environmental stability. The ship came to rest in an area of calm sediments, avoiding the dismemberment suffered by ships sunk in shallow waters due to currents and storms. This discovery transcends mere historical curiosity. For the NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, the Stewart is now an archaeological site of global significance. Studying its structure will allow engineers to better understand how the metal degrades in high-pressure environments over extended periods. For the Naval History and Heritage Command, NHHC, the discovery closes a chapter in the history of the Asiatic Fleet. The images obtained by Ocean Infinity will be used to create detailed 3D models of the vessel, allowing students and historians from around the world to take virtual dives into the ghost ship without disturbing the physical site, which will remain a protected sanctuary. The USS Stewart has had 3 lives: as a defender of freedom in Asia, as a captive under Japanese command, and as a returning veteran who served until his last breath. Its rediscovery is a triumph of teamwork and autonomous technology, demonstrating that there are still great mysteries to be solved beneath the waves. The USS Stewart has returned home, not to the docks, but to the collective memory of the world, finally resting in the peace of the California depths. To understand the magnitude of the discovery, it is necessary to analyze what the USS Stewart represented in terms of naval engineering. The class Clemson. It was one of the most prolific in the United States Navy during and after World War I. These ships were known as flush-deckers because of their continuous upper deck, and their most striking visual feature was their 4 funnels, which evacuated the fumes from their powerful oil boilers. The Stewart was designed to reach speeds of up to 35 knots, which for 1919 was a technological feat. This speed was their best defense and their best weapon for escorting convoys and hunting submarines. The Japanese ability to salvage and put into operation such a complex machine as this in 1942 speaks not only to their desperation for resources, but also to the high quality of the original American construction, which enabled the vessel to survive demolition explosions and months of abandonment in the marine mud. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. When the Imperial Japanese Navy salvaged the Stewart, they made significant changes to adapt it to their needs. They replaced the damaged boilers, installed Japanese anti-aircraft weaponry, and removed 2 of its side chimneys to change its visual profile. These changes likely contributed to its ghost ship status, as its silhouette was a confusing hybrid between an American destroyer and a Japanese patrol boat. The underwater discovery of 2024 will allow archaeologists to examine these modifications. Observing how technologies from 2 enemy powers were mixed in a single hull is a unique opportunity in the archaeology of conflicts. What parts of the original weaponry survived? How did the Japanese integrate their navigation systems? These questions, which were previously pure speculation, can now be answered by visual inspection of AUVs. The California coast has historically been a ship graveyard, but the area where the Stewart was located is particularly difficult to explore. Underwater currents and the topography of the seabed act as a natural barrier. The fact that the Stewart was sunk as a target for gunnery in 1946 meant that there was either no accurate record of coordinates at the time of its sinking, or that these records were lost in the post-war military bureaucracy. Modern research required interdisciplinary collaboration. Naval historians spent months reviewing F-6F Hellcat flight logs to triangulate the firing practice area, while oceanographers analyzed currents to predict where the ship might have drifted as it sank. This combination of archival detective work and cutting-edge technology is what defines 21st-century underwater archaeology. Underwater archaeology often faces the problem of disintegration. In shallow waters, the action of waves, oxygen, and marine life, such as wood-eating mollusks and metal-consuming bacteria, destroys a ship in a few years. However, the Stewart is located in what scientists call an ideal preservation zone. At 3,500 feet, the pressure is immense, about 100 times atmospheric pressure, which curiously helps to keep structures together. Extreme cold acts like a refrigerator, stopping the chemical processes of oxidation. Finding the ship virtually intact, archaeologists have a perfect model for studying life aboard an early 20th century destroyer. You might see tools, personal effects of the Japanese crew who last inhabited it, or even remnants of the original equipment from 1919. Like every sunken warship, the USS Stewart remains the property of the nation that built it, in this case, the United States. Although there is no evidence that there were human remains at the time of its final sinking in 1946, since it was sunk in a controlled manner, the site is treated with the utmost respect. The policy of the NHHC and the NOAA is one of in situ preservation. This means there are no plans to refloat the ship or remove large pieces of it. The goal is to document, not to loot. The use of digital imaging and photogrammetry allows the public to learn about the Stewart without a single human hand touching its hull. This ethical approach ensures that the ship remains a monument for future generations and an undisturbed site for scientific study. Ocean Infinity, the company behind this discovery, is the same one that participated in the search for Flight MH370 and the submarine ARA San Juan. Its ability to deploy fleets of AUVs operating simultaneously is revolutionizing ocean exploration. Previously, searching for a ship at the bottom of the sea was like looking for a needle in a haystack using a magnifying glass. Now it's like using a giant magnet with X-ray vision. The Stewart discovery demonstrates that 95% of the ocean floor that has not yet been mapped holds incalculable historical treasures. Each mission of this kind not only returns a ship to us, but also improves our ability to understand the vast ecosystem on which we depend. The USS Stewart is no longer a myth that pilots tell in canteens, nor a blurry entry in an Imperial Japanese Navy file. It is a reality of steel and glory that rests at the bottom of the Pacific. Their story teaches us about the irony of war, the durability of engineering, and the tireless curiosity of humankind. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.